Hello everyone, welcome to this Royal College of Art in session on designing leadership in a world changed by AI. I'm Jeremy Myerson, I'm Professor Emeritus in the Helen Hamlyn Centre for Design at the RCA, and it's my great pleasure to introduce and moderate this panel discussion on what is probably the most urgent topic right now across the landscape of art, design and business. There's no doubt that the AI revolution is set to do for creative knowledge work what the Industrial Revolution did for manual labour. And there's been a loud running commentary on what will happen to innovation, to intellectual property, to jobs, to the economy in the age of AI. But one thing missing from the current debate is what will happen to leadership. Leadership not just of large corporates, but of small creative studios as well. And we aim to correct that omission today with a great lineup of experts who will probe the leadership mindset, the value system, the creativity, and the resilience required to navigate the new world of AI. Just how important this theme is to the RCA community can be seen in the uptake for today's event. We've had more than 200 registrations from over 30 countries. But before we get going, I just want to say that we want you to be part of this conversation. So please put all your comments and questions in the chat. And I'll do my level best to weave them into the session and surface the questions and comments at the right points. So let me, without further ado, introduce the in-session panel. Marty Zalewski is an educator, design and business leader, and crucially, course leader of a new RCA executive education program set to launch on the 14th of May called Leading with a Design Mindset for a World Changed by AI. Annette Giardina is UK and Ireland Chief Innovation and Sustainability Officer at Avanade. This is a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft. So Annette is right on the front line where tech and consulting converge. And Neil Pearse is a partner in the people and organisational practice at McKinsey and Company. And I know that in my own work, I've used a lot of McKinsey research on how organisations can adapt for these changing conditions. So that's our panel. We've got Marty, we've got Annette, we've got Neil, and we've got a very complex landscape in front of us. But I'm going to go to you first, Marty. Let's start with the core question. Does leadership need to be redesigned in a world changed by AI?
Thank you, Jeremy, and thanks to everyone for the opportunity to share this space with you together with our guests. Does leadership actually need to be redesigned in a world changed by AI? Well, I do not feel that's the case, but allow me to help you understand what leadership actually means to me. So, because leadership is personal, and when I use the word leadership, that may mean one thing to me and something else to someone else. So allow me to give you a little bit of context. And maybe as I do, can I ask for those in the audience watching us live to put in the chat what leadership is to you in the world changed by AI? So what are the conditions of leadership? What leadership in the world changed by AI means to you? So if I just take a bit of reflection here. So I've spent my career working at the intersection of people, technology, and performance. And I began my professional career in innovation at GE, which is widely considered the school of leadership. And I've had the pleasure of working with some of the most incredible humans who had the courage to stand up for, at the time, how customer centricity and experience design improve business outcomes. And this was during the digital transformation. And over the past 20 years, I've led transformation and capability building initiatives across industries, But across all that work, one guiding principle has remained constant, and that's that technology on its own does not create value. Performance does. And performance is a function of human capability enabled through technology, and now it's AI. Which is why in my work I focus on helping professionals across both business and design translate complexity into human capabilities enabled with AI and do so in a way that builds both credibility and trust with the people who ultimately make that change real. So you see, when I talk about credibility and trust, I mean, these have been the foundations of leadership for forever. This hasn't changed. And the future of leadership is not defined how we manage systems, but how well and credibly we enable the humans within those systems. And Jeremy and my guests, I mean, I don't think this has changed. But we very often need a bit of a refresher. What we need in the process of becoming credible and trustworthy, especially in today's reality of AI. And it's not just AI, it's continuous change, it's systemic shifts, it's the global uncertainty that we're experiencing, and it requires a little bit of a different mindset, if you will. I call it a design mindset, that allows leaders, all of us really, to work with uncertainty, understand human emotions, needs, those things that are innately human qualities like creativity and play, to ultimately translate complexity into action and, build organizations, big and small, that continuously learn and evolve. So to me, in a world changed by all this, this is where leadership sits at the intersection of credibility and trust. Just
I just don't want to interrupt your flow, but we've got some lovely definitions coming in from
yeah,
Olivia Obo, meet people's needs rather than profit, Linda Hausman, base it on integrity, Mary Herbert, talking about AI as an intrinsic tool, helping people go beyond what they thought was possible. So some lovely pieces coming in that are very much in line with the kind of human-centered approach.
yeah, and I love this, and thank you so much. And please keep them coming, because the very credibility comes from understanding, through awareness, right? And to understand through awareness, I need to connect with my own emotions. And I heard some of this here, pause and reflect on things that truly matter, and then and then what's the sort of the strategic why, what's the intention behind, so that in the process of doing so, I'm letting go of conditioned patterns, the old behaviors, and most importantly, I'm not being led by fear. I'm not being led by something that I'm missing out on, but I'm being led by true intentions, and that builds credibility. And when I think about trust, that emerges with through helping others rethink the situations that they're in by holding space for them, bridging perspective, shared experiences, new possibilities. So in many ways, leadership is really about helping people transform the knowledge they already have. I mean, we've amassed so much knowledge. All we need is the key to very often to kind of translate that knowledge into wisdom, right? So, so to me, leaders really give that credibility and trust, holding space for everyone, giving them the tools to move forward with confidence. And that's what I really see as the need for the world we live in today. So no, we don't need to we don't need to change it, but we need to ask ourselves on what foundation are we driving change for others.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Simran Deep on the chat said leadership would guide the balance between humans creating as compared to choosing from AI generated content, and I think that's going to be a big theme in our session today. Annette, can I bring you in? And the fundamentals of leadership. I mean, you're in a joint venture where I'm sure there's been all kinds of leadership issues, and AI is very much part of the story. What's your take on what Marty's saying?
Yeah, I think for us and for me in particular, but also for my organization, what we look at is that AI is a tool, and it has to be based around human-centric design. And that the most important part of any organization putting AI in is that the very first thing you have to do is set your leadership guardrails and principles in place. And you have to think about how you're going to have responsible business ethics. So we tend to talk to people about human-centric design and using AI as a supporting tool. So as leaders, what we need to be thinking about is AI is there to take away the mundanity of our daily jobs. It's not there to replace people. Now, in the consulting industry, the biggest single thing that everybody's scared about is everyone's going to lose their jobs because, if you're
Mm.
if you're a coder, AI can write your code. As leaders, we have to stand up and we have to show that we're looking at how we use AI to enhance the work experience, not take it away. And we use AI as a tool and not a replacement. And I think, I'll talk a little bit more about that and when we talk about creativity, but I think all of the principles of leadership that we've all hopefully always embraced should not change because of AI. In fact, they should become stronger.
Yeah.
And it's when we're in a time of great change or a time of crisis that it's the most important to be a leader, and it's the most important to lead from the front and actually demonstrate by example what you expect and how you want things to work.
Neil, can I bring you in? What's
Mm.
your what advice are McKinsey giving their clients around implementation and
Well,
adoption of AI? And is
thank you,
it
Jeremy.
changing management models?
It's certainly changing the model as Annette said of consultants. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, going to be open about this. We have junior consultants who are now changing their jobs radically in terms of how they use AI to write presentations and do things. By the way, the view is sort of everything gets faster, but it doesn't necessarily get better. So you actually have to work with that. But I mean, one thing I want to say about leadership is I think it has been changing in recent years. I mean, one way of putting it is I think that I had a client that said something that's paradoxical in a way. He said that there are two things at the center of leadership and organizations now. So organizations need to be customer centric and they need to be people centric at the same time. So, it doesn't really take the people out. And I loved what I think Michaela said, or one thing, host sense making.
Yeah.
There is still, I mean, what we would say, what I would certainly say is, you know, AI can't yet tell us where we should give our attention. It can't yet tell us how we should make judgments. I had a client that had to decide, what do we do about the fact that now, Russia has invaded Ukraine and we have to decide whether to continue to work in Russia, but we're providing some very important services. What do we do? Now, AI can probably give you all the puts and takes of the both sides of leaving, staying, and everything else. In the end, the organization had to sit together as humans and say, what is our identity as an organization? What is our ethical identity? Who are we in the world? And therefore, what should we do? And so I think I don't see, and we don't see that people element going, disappearing at the leadership level. But boy, will it transform the, underlying like speed of transactions and take out a lot of that work. But then, so did a lot of other technologies, right?
Mm.
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
you there's
sorry.
an interesting point in the window that Phillips raised, which is that leadership is about inspiration, and can AI manage that yet? And my thought process in that would be absolutely not. Inspiration is something that you exhibit. AI can certainly give some information to leaders to help them
Yeah.
be inspirational, but it's not going to make them inspirational.
But I think, Annette, you mentioned here an interesting point. To become inspirational sometimes takes courage,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? And courage gets, in my experience, mixed up with emotions, being control, etc. And I I feel a lot of us feel that we're being controlled by AI, by the change, as opposed to, but we all have the agency. We may just be missing a bit of, a
Mm-hmm.
framework, right? A framework to enable that agency back because we've got it, right? Somehow we've managed to get to this point. Some of us have been around, digital transformation and other big shifts. So we've arrived, and we've arrived with all the tools, with all the experience, with all the knowledge we'll ever need. But sometimes we need that leader who knows themselves well enough, and to the points we've been discussing, serve as the role model for courage, hold space, clean the desk for you, for us who need to, who need to do something, and serve there as a supporting mechanism, not as someone saying, go adopt AI today or face the door.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you've written, Marty, that pre-AI leaders optimized efficiency, post-AI leaders have got to optimize judgment and adaptability. And my favorite word, and it was the Economist's word of the year, which was work slop, which is all the stuff generated by AI. Neil, you said there's so much speed, but is it definitely better? We've got so many options and scenarios and models and alternatives. It's beyond human capacity sometimes to deal with it. So we've talked a little bit about leadership. I want to talk about a value framework, and I'm going to come to you, Neil. How do we anchor our decisions? Where's our moral compass in all this? You can see from the chat that there's a strong orientation in the RCA community to leadership as Richard Pearse said, leadership is a social and human phenomenon. So let's talk about values.
I mean, first of all, the way I think about values, maybe this is a design thing, is as well, values can sometimes be seen as kind of, how can I say, emotional floaters. They just sort of float. You go to organizations, our values are collaboration, or I can't tell you the number of organizations that they say our values are empowerment or something. So values in organizations, I think in the end, are sort of design shapers of who does the work, how it gets done, etc. And that leads you more actually directly into ethical territory, which is sort of who should do the work, who should take the decisions. And I think then, again, related to AI, I don't think we are close yet to having a situation where we will delegate that kind of ethical decision making to AI. I also, by the way, in my past for my sins, I have a philosophical training. So I have a lot of philosopher friends who say that's not possible, and they fall around on the floor laughing when people say things like, AI is conscious or something like that. They say that's not possible. Things that are conscious, for example, tend to have experiences. They're embodied. They interact with the world. So I think, first of all, our values are shapers. And as far as I can see, I don't see any alternative. They will remain deeply human. Someone has a phrase in McKinsey, they sometimes say, the robots will become more robotic and the humans will become more human. And I think it was Alice said, AI saves time. Well, what does AI save time for? Yeah. AI saves time for humans who can think, can make more judgments, can think about what the really right things to do, about how to help the world, etc. So in that sense, an optimistic view of AI, though probably not for everyone, is AI will be a liberating force for humans to be more human. Because I spent this morning doing stuff that I probably regard as a waste of time. If I could do more stuff that was just being wise. The other thing I would say, I just want to put a word in the whole thing, is I like this word that one word that's beginning to make a bit of a comeback is wisdom.
Yeah.
That we're now beginning to see that actually what we need is wisdom from leaders. Not efficiency, not management speed, but wisdom. So maybe I'll leave it there, but think about that.
Yeah. I mean, you've written, Neil, that values are not soft; they're operational, which I rather liked because, you get a sense of how that happens in the organization. Everybody, do put your comments about a value system and AI and the ethical considerations around AI, do put them in the chat, and any comments and questions. We'll have a section later in the discussion where we'll pick over the best questions and put our panel on spot. Marty and Annette, what's your take on these kind of moral anchor points?
I mean, for me, it's really important that as leaders and as organizations, we're thinking through upfront what we want AI to do. So I remember back when, ChatGPT first came out and Microsoft started releasing all its copilots, and I had a customer say to me, "Why aren't you using GitHub for Copilot here yet? It's been out for 9 months." And I said, well, for the first 3 months, we had a cohort of 100 people testing it, making sure we understood what it did. And then we wrote our ethical guidelines and our boundaries. And then once we wrote our ethical boundaries and our guidelines, we rolled it out to 600 people and had them test it. And then we strengthened those ethical boundaries and guidelines. And only then did we roll it out to other people. And we won't roll it out to our customers until we're sure that we've got the values right. And I think that's really important. You have to start with responsible AI values, ethics, and guidelines. And you have to set that for the whole organization. So for instance, when we first started using Copilot in Teams, one of the things we found was that folks who had ADHD and was dyslexic were finding Teams was really helpful because they could, in Copilot chat, catch me up on the meeting, and it would distill the meeting, and then it gave them a chance to pause and come back. But what we also found was that some people were starting to do things like after the meeting say, "Tell me who was angry in the meeting. Tell me who was sarcastic in the meeting," that sort of thing. So we changed our rules so that you couldn't use those sorts of prompts, because we didn't want it to be divisive. We wanted it to be supportive. So it always comes back to that value statement. Like, so for instance, there's a chat in the window right now about surveillance. We won't allow anything to be used within our own tool set. We can't stop our customers from doing it if they choose to do it, but we won't use stuff in our own tool set to monitor or surveil people using AI, because that's not what it's there for in our minds. So I think it's really important that you set those ethics up front, and you stand by those ethics, and you make sure your organization understands them.
Yeah, I mean, Priyanka's point is a very, very strong one.
Yeah.
The analogy with, everyone can see the chat. The analogy with the atomic bomb, it can be made, but should we use it? Who decides? And there's a big controversy this week with OpenAI and the Pentagon, all the rest of it. I did say it was a very hot topic. We'll come back to that question later on. Marty, I just want to ask you, where do values sit within a design-led leadership model?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Thanks for these, for the comments in the chat and everyone's thoughts. I really appreciate this framework because, values shape how work gets designed in organizations. Ethical decisions remain, fundamentally human, and then you've got the AI that, is basically helping us all free, to focus on, judgment and, Neil, you mentioned wisdom, right? So when I think about where it sits, we first need a bit of a design mindset to help us translate values into, systems, operating models, decision processes, and so on. And it's fundamental, it's foundational, right? Because we need to. AI is not going to help us decide what is right or wrong, as we've been discussing, but it can help us get to decisions faster. It can help us do things slightly better. But in order for that to be effective, we need to adapt first. We need to very often, in my experience, ask ourselves: is it my ego speaking, or am I actually making, or I'm meaningfully connecting with AI, or I am against it for the right reasons because of my value set, right? And it takes a bit of it takes a bit of inner work, and once that gives me an idea of on the ground I stand on, I'm then able to more meaningfully connect with technology, be it AI or anything for that matter, but also connect more meaningfully with another human.
Yeah.
Can I add just one point? Just thinking about what Priyanka said and some of the other things that are in the chat. I remember years back when we really first started getting into digital and we were talking about VUCA and all sorts of things. I saw an excellent speaker from Gartner, and the whole theme of his chat was, "We can, but should we?" And I think that becomes really, really relevant with AI. There are things we can do with AI, but should we? And I think from a values perspective, that's a question we all have to ask ourselves all the time. And it speaks back to that concept of, what should it be used for and what can it be used for?
I also say, I think one of the dangers of AI now, is an interesting number of people who say this, is it can seem to be diminishing humanity in a sense. We sort of go, well, we're not AI is, we have this vision about, it's this wonderful thing. It does all these fantastic things. And we forget what humans do. And humans do some pretty unique, amazing things, some pretty creative things, some pretty wise things, some pretty caring things, some pretty ethical things. They are able to, if we decide to do it at some level, to control the next atomic bomb or whatever. So I think what we've got to not fall into this trap of sort of comparing ourselves unfavorably to AI. This is nonsense.
But
AI does some wonderful things. It doesn't do many, many, many things that humans still uniquely do, right?
But the most important thing is AI can't do anything without the creative efforts of humans.
Right.
AI scrapes the internet. AI works off of data.
Yeah.
Those images, the writings, they came from a human.
Yeah.
AI is consuming it, and consuming it at a rate faster than we can. And a good example is within our own organization, we now have an AI. When we get an RFP in, we can feed the questions into the AI, and it searches across all of our proposals to say, give me answers. But a human still has to take that and say, okay, well, this is what's relevant, and it's not exactly the same question, but at least I got some ideas. It's kind of like, back in the old days when you used to have a clipping service. It's giving you all the information in a consolidated way, but you still need a brain, and you still need to consume that information and use it wisely.
But I mean, I should say McKinsey's sticking to this now. Let's see how long all these organizations. We will not allow any substantive judgment to go to a client in terms of anything that looks like a recommendation or anything like that, which has not been through, the normal level of human checking. You can't do it. Now, we could ask AI to make recommendations and we could just deliver them. That is against our ethical and operational policies at the moment.
Yeah, same for us. We're not allowed to use it for that.
I just want to add one thing, though. What we're saying is
just before you jump in,
yes.
Mark, just to say that we can't bring participants onto the screen due to the way this meeting is configured. So, Alana Rudik, if you could put your question or comment in the chat, that would be great. Yeah. We're not ignoring you. Sorry, Marty, I interrupted.
Oh no, and thank you, because I cannot, for some reason, my chat comes in and out. So I just wanted to say, but this raises an important question. Should we define what is human and what is machine, right? For example, maybe this is a question to the audience as well. What do you see as innately human, and what would you attribute to something that machines can do and pick up from humans, so that humans can focus on other things, almost like freeing up the capacity. And to me, and I'd love to, welcome the rest of the panel, it's creativity, it's play, it's judgment, it's wisdom. Any other you would add?
It's a good list. A very good list, Martin.
It's a good list, yeah.
Yeah, gut feel. I love this, Mary. Yeah, gut feel, right? I mean, AI will have.
A philosopher friend of mine, I'll try to be very quick on this one. He talks to general practitioners in the health service, and they're getting a very interesting phenomenon that, someone who comes in at a patient and they say, these are my symptoms. The machine now will say, you should prescribe this.
Yeah.
The phenomenon is that certainly more the experienced doctors say, I don't know, I don't think that's what we should prescribe here. So what do you even do with that phenomenon of what I might say is experience-wise judgment? But I think this is what's going to come to us, because some people will just go with the agent or go with the doctor, right?
It's an incredibly important point because, one of the things that I always stress, and I know others in the field stress, is that AI hallucinates. AI is not always accurate. AI will try to answer your question, but that doesn't mean the answer is right. You still have to apply a human lens to it. And Simrandeep wrote in the window about how he always feels like it's kind of diminishing his creativity. And, I agree. There's times when I use it, I'm stuck. So I'll use it to like summarize some thoughts and I'll go, okay, but that doesn't sound like me. So I'm going to rewrite it because it has to sound like me. It has to be my voice.
Yeah.
So I think
we've talked about leadership models and mindsets. We've talked about value systems. Let's get to the nub of it, because for this audience, creativity is the big issue. Is AI going to erode it or enhance it? And there's some very interesting stuff. Maria Gallant says, how can anything created by AI have a copyright?
Yeah.
There was one, can it have desire? Can I have desire like a human?
Yeah, from Olivia. So Annette, give us a perspective on creativity.
Okay, so I have the hot button topic, so I'm expecting this audience on this one. So I think from a standpoint of creativity and leadership, I think what's really important is that I always talk about AI needs to be additive, not reductive, when it comes to a creative world. And what I mean by additive, not reductive, is additive AI is it's helping me do my job, or it's taking away the mundanity, the boring stuff that allows me more time to create, or it's giving me information that I as a human could not gather, or it would take me so long to gather that it would be ridiculous. Whereas reductive is I'm designing the AI to take people's jobs away. I was driving down the A40 the other day, headed towards Paddington, and there was an Uber driverless car on the road. Best example of reductive AI you can possibly see. I don't need drivers anymore, which means I can take those people out of the workplace. What they're going to do afterwards, no one cares seemingly, but the key thing is that's reductive. So a good example of that is when we designed an intelligent garden for RHS Chelsea last year, and it was we went into it really worried because here we were going to bring AI into gardening, and how would people take that and how would they handle it? But the first rule we put in place was that whatever we were going to design couldn't be designed to take people's jobs away. It was going to be designed to give horticulturalists and scientists and gardeners tools they wouldn't otherwise have. And what ended up happening was a really cool ability to talk to trees and have trees tell you what they needed to stay healthy. And the things that we're tracking using sensors and AI cannot be derived by a human. A human cannot measure the micron growth of sap per day. But that's actually a really key indicator of tree health. So when you're looking at creativity in design, think about how the AI is going to enhance your creativity. It's kind of like if I have no eye for color and I have no eye on how to frame a picture, I can use AI to create art, but I won't know if it's good or bad. And it's probably going to be quite bad because I don't have, if I don't have those senses. So I think it's really important that when we're designing for AI in a creative world, we're thinking about how the AI augments the people's creativity. It doesn't take it away. I'll give you another example. I'm in the process of having parts of my house redesigned. My architect has come in and he's used LiDAR to measure my house instead of having to spend hours with the tape measure. So he's done a LiDAR image of my house, and then he's gone off and he's done his designs, but then he walks me through them in virtual reality. So I can walk around my house because it's been put in LiDAR. I can walk around my entire house and see what it's going to look like when the design is done. That didn't take away from Nick's creativity. It didn't take away from his skill as an architect. It didn't take away from my ability to inform him of what I wanted. What it did was make it easier for him to do his job and make it easier for me to visualize what the end result would be. So I think when it comes to the creative world, what we really need to think about is how do we bring that human-centric design in that we talked about before, and how do we make it as a really good tool for people to be able to use. And I think there's a really good book that came out years and years ago called Black Swan, and there's a section in that book where he talks about the fact that you can't let things be taken over by the dictatorship of mediocrity. AI, as some people use it, is the best example of the dictatorship of mediocrity. You have to bring creativity into it. You have to stand up and challenge. And you have to be able to say, okay, I can use that, but should I? I.e., as Neil alluded to before, I'm not gonna use AI to make a judgment that could affect somebody's business or career or life. That's so it's how we pull those things together. And then I would also just say, back to the kind of the sustainability and the environments. That's another really important thing, because as a sustainability officer, when we were building AI for the garden, my biggest fear was that it was going to consume tons and tons of energy. But in reality, what we did was we built a small language model that was highly, highly trained, so that actually the more data we put into that small language model, the smarter it gets and the more efficiently it runs. So it doesn't consume as much power. So when you start to look at how you can do these things, you have to take all these things into account. I noticed somebody put in there in the chats that economies are using AI to be reductive. Absolutely agree. But the point is that we have to inspire, and we have to lead and say that's not the right way to do it. There was an article just out the other day about a chap who was talking about consultancy, and he said that consultancy isn't dead, but the pyramid model is, and what we're going to need in the future is a diamond. Well, yeah, that's a great idea, except for the fact that all that middle layer of expertise, where did it come from? Oh, it came from the pyramid of people doing the job and learning and getting that knowledge. So how do we use the knowledge to continue to learn, take away the boring? A good example is I was working with a wealth management company a couple of years ago, and one of the things wealth managers do is their juniors create a client book. And it takes them about 3 weeks to create this client book, because they go and do all this research and gather all this information. And we showed them that they could actually create that client book using AI in about 8 hours. And the chief partner looked at me and said, how the hell am I going to train my juniors if they don't know how to do the research? And I said, that's a really good point. But once they've learned to do the research, wouldn't it make sense to let them use this tool and save them time? Yeah. And then they can use that time to actually do additive work and do better work. I'll stop there.
I mean, very, very interesting examples and a very nice painting of a positive picture. One of my roles is I'm the founder and chairman of something called Work Tech Academy, and we did a report on the world of work in 2026, and one of our trends was something called the no entry enterprise, in which both large companies and small creative firms are not taking on juniors to do the kind of stuff that can be done by AI. And speaking as somebody who's worked for many years in an institution that's training artists and designers to go into the world. That's a real worry. Your architect may use AI to measure your house, Annette, but a human being might have done that, straight out of college, a few years ago. So, there's all kinds of dichotomies and checks and balances. I want to bring in Marty and Neil. What are your reflections on creativity?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Annette, and everyone who's contributing in the chat. So, to me, creativity isn't about producing ideas. It's about seeing possibilities that do not yet exist, right? So it's, when I design change programs, transformation programs, I welcome to the table representatives from, different sides of business, and I enable them to, I enable their creativity. Right. But very often I kind of go back to AI. Okay, well, what else, how can we do this better? What else should we be mindful of? We have access to a lot of knowledge, and in the context of creativity, I see AI helping us making sense of that knowledge so that we can use that as additional inputs. And as we do, we turn that knowledge into wisdom, and it's a creative act. And I see there's a lot of benefit. Also, I think, Annette, you started mentioning the point on AI democratizing access to what was previously available only to consultants, designers, people with certain education. Right? Now anyone can access that. But yes, there's an element of learning that needs to be done in order to make it, usable. But how great is it that I can learn code through AI? How great is it that I can learn, I can pick up, some of the frameworks that were previously only available if I went to a business school or a design school. Right? I have access to it, and then I have AI supporting me in the learning journey. But now you see, back to making this operational, right? So we need to take all these considerations in designing these adaptive models for organizations, big and small. When do we turn to AI? What do we keep as human? Back to the points we've been making.
Okay, Neil.
The only thing I'd add, maybe this shows my age. Some of you may remember, there's a lot of talk about paradigm shifts. Everyone remember paradigm shifts? We're going to have big paradigm shifts in science, in art, and in technology. I think there still are going to be paradigm shifts.
Of course, sir.
I don't know how AI is going to produce paradigm shifts. Because it's exactly as you said, it's in effect still scraping the past. It can recombine, it can do things. You probably know better than me in some ways, you people out there, but there's some architects, you can't really explain them in terms of recombination. You can't explain, Schoenberg in terms of recombination in music. There are leaps and things and there are smaller ones we make in our day-to-day life. And I don't think it's credible yet. Maybe it will never be, for the reasons we've talked about, that AI will make these kind of paradigm shift leaps. Yeah, that's the human domain.
It's one of the reasons I brought up the book, The Black Swan, Neil, because The Black Swan is all about if you only base all your predictions on what has happened in the past, you won't see the big changes that are coming. And, in the book, he uses as an example a turkey that's going to get killed for Thanksgiving. Does not realize that because for the past 212 days, it's gotten up and every day and had a really nice life. But tomorrow's Thanksgiving. And, and so you can't just always scrape the past. You have to predict. And AI can't really do that.
And you have to leap, Annette. At some point, you leap. Humans have a capacity to, as you said before, it's play. You leap. You say, let's do this. And you can we can all name our favorite writers, artists, technologists, designers, whatever, and you will see leaps.
I did a talk at Women of Silicon Roundabout about 8 years ago about AI. And we talked about, AI and how it should be being used. And one of the things we talked about was the fact that AI is the fourth industrial revolution, and every industrial revolution will leave some people behind, because some industries will die out, but other industries will get created. And if and so that's part of it as well. And as leaders, part of our job is to make sure that not so many people get left behind, that it becomes disruptive to society as a whole. We have to actually take care. And that's, I think, as a leader, it's our responsibility, or it should be our responsibility, to say, okay, yes, I can, if I put this in, I can take away 200 jobs, or I can say, actually, I can do X% more business with exactly the same number of people. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily adding jobs, but I'm also not taking them away. And I think, we have to really start thinking as a whole and agitating as a whole, and saying, this is what we need for this to be successful.
I just want to, there's a lot of really good questions, and I want to give you a chance. I'm gonna spray some of the questions to individuals on our panel. But before we do that, Marty, I'd just like to touch for a few moments on resilience. Everyone's talking about the resilient organization, the resilient workforce, resilient creativity. Paint a picture on resilience for us in terms of AI.
No, thank you. And to get to resilience, let me just recap the, what we talked about: adaptive mindset, creative capability, right? So, adaptive mindset is all sort of how we become aware, how we make decisions, what's AI, what's human. Creative capability is like, how we make sense, of AI and, the complexity in a meaningful way, but also in a way that helps us differentiate in the market and create impact and value. And in my experience, I tell you, I couldn't even tell you how many times I see products being launched, transformations delivered. And I hope Annette should be smiling now, right? And off to the races, off to the next thing, right? We never pause to actually reflect on what's been done, how it's been done, right? We rarely, I don't want to generalize, but yes, we rarely think about how we've come together to this point as individuals, as an organization, to create this lasting impact, value, and how to make it sustainable for the future. So we do more with less. So if AI at the foundational level allows us to do more with less, why not do the same thing once we've delivered something, reflect on learnings. So for me, it's all about integration. How do we integrate this into our rituals and behaviors as an organization? How, and it's, how do we start caring for one another as a result? How do we learn from it? In design, we have retrospective, which is a phenomenal tool that allows us to pause, reflect, and really connect how things were done to gather the learnings and apply them to, for the future. And this really helps support in creation of learning organizations and self-realizing learning, right? Because we retain that wisdom that's been created to date.
Okay.
Then it's also about iterating, right? So how do we build for the future? What sort of what's our continuous improvement? And as a result, time to value improves, right? We've invested so much to get to this point. Why not just go for the longer term, right? Make it more sustainable. And in the end, we also build adaptive change. But also at the top of the tree, and many of you know my framework for adaptive growth, it ends with celebration, right? And celebration is a key component of resilience building, recognizing no matter how big or small the contributions that have been made, the progress that I've made or the team has made, and just really celebrate those moments. And it could be as small as little micro moments of recognition, reward, but we're human. This is what we do. We come together, we exchange perspectives, experience. That's how we learn, right? And celebration is so important to me as part of resilience building.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think that kind of it kind of squares the circle around the kind of methodology you're talking about. We've just got time for a few questions, and I'm going to direct them at individuals. Zrinka said, is it possible that AI can develop in a way to be a species? I'm going to ask the philosopher on the panel, Neil. Is AI a species?
Actually, I think this is a really good question in the sense of it is a species. I mean, maybe my first philosopher answer would be it's a species. It's the species of AI. But even we have it's not a species of humanity. It's a species of AI. I mean, when someone says here, there's a lot of philosophers who say things like, you want to be careful saying things like this is intelligent even, because it is intelligent, but it's not intelligent the same way as a human is. So it has a different kind of intelligence. And I suppose my point would be, you probably heard it a bit, like there's many wonderful things about AI and how it's going to speed things up and do all sorts of things, but it's going to not do some things that humans do, which is all the ones we've been talking about. So we must have a different form of intelligence. So maybe we're the different species here.
Yeah. I know Sunil Sharma has said AI is not a biological species, but a synthetic intelligence created by humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Annette, in a world where design work is augmented by AI, ultimately, who stands to benefit most from the efficiencies that AI brings? Is it the client? Is it the end user? Or is it the creative team?
Ooh, that's a good one.
This is from Titania Martins.
I'm going to take the wimpy way out and say all of them, because if I look at if I go back to our intelligent garden, we thought that like garden designers and horticulturalists were going to hate us for creating this, and in fact they've embraced it because it gives them more information than they had before, which allows them to be better horticulturalists. And I'll give you a different example. We did some work for Scottish and Southern Energy during lockdown, where we designed puffin facial recognition software so that they could count the puffins, because they have a requirement to do that because of their windmills. So that was good for them as a client, right? But for the RSPB, it was amazing because they can now track every single puffin in the UK from birth to death and know exactly where it is in Scotland, because we have wrote puffin recognition software. And now we've written salmon recognition software, which allows us to, and trout recognition software, which allows us to track the health of a river. So the point I'm making is we often don't know what we'll derive from AI and the use of it until we've actually done it. And so so it helps the client because it's made their job easier. It helps the designer because the designer can now do more and has more information to work from. But it also helps in ways we honestly don't know until we've gotten there. We've gone, oh wow, we can count the number of bees and the number of different types of bees that have visited our garden, and therefore we can track the health of the bee population.
Annette, can I work for you guys? I love how honestly, help me out here, right?
Can I just, because we've only got a few minutes left, and I'll get to as many questions as possible. There's a great one about how can AI be used without destroying the environment? Because we know that these plants and these incredible installations that you need and the amount of energy.
So I'm working with Open UK and others. There's a whole group of people around the world working on how we make data centers green. And one of the initiatives that we're working on as part of Open UK is making those green data centers. And there's a company in the UK called Deep Green, and what they do is they site data centers in disused properties, and they use the heat that generates from those data centers to become electricity for the buildings around them. They start in community centers where they install a data center below a pool. The water that's used to cool the data center comes from the pool. It heats up and it goes back, and now it heats the pool. And the excess energy is used to run all the kit in the community center. So we need to create that circular economy around data centers, and we have to look at how we lower the consumption of power, but more importantly, how do we lower the consumption of water, because that's actually the big issue. So to make AI sustainable, we have to refactor the way we make, create, and use data centers. And it's down to everything from greening the building, so having living roofs, to how we power it, to, you know, we've been talking to some of the data centers around what we've done for the intelligent garden, where they can actually plant trees around the data centers, and keep those trees healthy, but actually use those trees to offset some of the energy and the carbon that's coming out of the data centers. It comes back to a key aspect of sustainability: circularity. That's the only way it works.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, this is going to be a big topic. There are philosophical, ethical, technical, environmental, social, economic. The layers of AI are incredible, and Debbie Blanford's comment: "You can talk about it forever, but at the end of the day, it will be used against us." Oh my God!
No, but we have the agency to influence it, right? And I think we just need a bit of a frame.
Yeah.
No,
can I ask you, Marty?
By us, right? So we just need a bit of a frame, right? Sorry for jumping in here, but
just to close us out, we've got this Royal College of Art Executive Education, a new program on designing and leading in a world of AI. What can people expect on the program, Marty? Just give us a little kind of flavor of what we're going to do.
And may I just ask someone, Sophie or Katie, if you'd be so kind to kind of put a link in the chat to the program, so that those in attendance could reference it. So thank you for this. So you can definitely expect this and a lot more, right? So in short, the course is about designing the conditions for adaptive growth. So this is mindset shift, creative capability, resilience in the building that we talked about, so that all of us can really challenge ourselves and create a frame for how we organize ourselves to create products and services that are loved, and in partnership with AI, to a lot of points that we mentioned here. And the best part, you will have both guests as guests of honor attending on the individual days, so you can definitely pick their brains a lot more.
This is a two-day program?
It's a 2-day program, and it's delivered actually as an intensive 2-day program, really mindset shifting, creativity building. And I really encourage everyone to bring their own opportunities and challenges into the classroom. So this is going to be, we're not going to be just sitting. We're going to be really, we're going to be ideating. We're going to be prototyping solutions in a real environment. So you'll be collaborating throughout with your peers and navigating similar, basically navigating similar complexities and accountabilities at the time. So that I really, my passion, I'm very pragmatic. Everything I've always done over 20 years has been, how is it going to create value, right? So to humans, right? To humans enabled through technology. So I want to bring this into the classroom. And at the end of those 2 days, I really hope that everyone's going to work out with, working prototypes of whatever they brought in for solutioning.
Okay, thank you very much, Marty. Everybody, we're out of time. It's been a really wild ride of a debate. We knew it was a hot topic. It's white hot in terms of the various dimensions. Can I say a huge thank you to Marty Zalewski, to Neil Pearse, and to Annette Giardina for your comments and insights. To you participants, fantastic thread, which I hope we can publish. And see you at the next Royal College of Art in session. Thanks for joining.
Thank
you all.